BO revealed today that this Prime Minister will apply a second carbon tax on the backs of Quebecers. Beyond all the taxes that Quebecers have to pay on gas already, in addition, he's adding another 17 cents. And he'll apply the sales tax as well, for a total of 20 cents of tax for every liter, for every family, for every farmer, for every company in Quebec. Mr. Speaker, how much will every Quebec family have to pay? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that Quebecers who are listening today know how the fight against climate change is a key issue, and they know how the Conservatives on this question have nothing to say. They have no plan or measures, despite the promises they made during their last election campaign. They don't even believe in the reality of climate change, even though there's flooding in Quebec and record fires in Alberta. I think people expect a responsible government on climate change, and that's not happening with the Conservatives. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition, that's absolutely nonsense. The Quebecers are the greenest people in the world, and this Liberal government is preventing construction of dams and other projects for hydroelectricity that is green. At the same time, they want to force Quebecers to pay an additional 20 cents per litre or $500 per family in tax, and they want to do so with the support of the bloc that is wokest, Mr. Speaker. It's only the Conservative Party that has the logic to eliminate this aggressive tax. Mr. Speaker, will the government listen to good sense and axe the tax? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will allow my honourable colleagues from the bloc answer that question to know if they are wokest. I think that's not up for me to say, but I would like to say that once again, the Leader of the Opposition is saying something that's absolutely not true. What we're doing is a mechanism to ensure that refineries who have made record profits in recent years, Mr. Speaker, do their fair share with respect to the climate change crisis. And I think that people expect every areas in the country to do their fair share in terms of climate change. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Saying these things, it is the Parliamentary Budget Officer this government appointed, and just yesterday the Finance Minister said we should believe the Parliamentary Budget Officer. What did he say? He revealed that the first carbon tax will cost 41 cents a litre, and now that there's a second carbon tax of 17 cents a litre, and then when you add the HST on those two taxes, you get a total new tax increase of 61 cents a litre, costing $2,000 a family. How are Canadians going to be able to pay their bills after this new and latest Liberal tax hike?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to quote from the Parliamentary Budget Officer's own analysis, which, and I quote, does not attempt to account for the economic and environmental costs of climate change. He's looking, the Parliamentary Budget Officer is looking at one side of the ledger, Mr. Speaker, without looking at the other side of the ledger. And we know that climate change is already costing Canadians billions of dollars every year. In fact, Mr. Speaker, tens of billions of dollars every year. Of course, if you're the Conservative Party of Canada, you don't believe in climate change and you don't care that those costs to Canadians. But unfortunately, facts are facts, Mr. Speaker, and those costs are real to all Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Climate costs are real, but they will not be reduced as a result of this tax.
That's right.
And so the minister's argument leads to a dead end. The Parliamentary Budget Officer said carbon tax 1 would cost 41 cents a litre. Now carbon tax 2, 17 cents a litre. And then they want to tax the tax on the tax by putting HST on top of all that, so it's going to be 61 cents a litre in carbon taxes. We already have 1 in 5 Canadians skipping meals because they can't afford the price of food. How many people are going to go hungry when this government imposes this tax hike?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, the Leader of the Opposition is wrong yet again, because our plan is working and has led to reduce an emission in Canada and climate change pollution by more than 50 million tons between 2019 and 2021 beyond COVID. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, it's called a pandemic because it was happening all over the world, and yet Canada in 2020 and 2021 has the best performance of all G7 countries, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Emissions only went down when they actually locked down the country for COVID, but they want to do that forever. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister decriminalized crack, heroin, and other hard drugs on January the 31st. He's flooded the streets with taxpayer-funded hydromorphine. And today, we have learned the tragic results. The report from British Columbia shows that 7 people are dying every day of overdoses. In April, overdose rates were up 17%. This experiment has failed. When will the Prime Minister get common sense, get drugs off our street, and get our people into treatment?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health.
Mr. Speaker, our hearts are with all the people the families that have lost a loved one to this terrible crisis caused by a poisoned drug supply. The BC coroner has said there is no evidence that safe supply has been implicated in any of these drug deaths. We have to use every tool in our toolbox to stop this terrible tragedy, and that includes prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and enforcement.
Calgary Forest Lawn.
Carbon tax scam 1 cost on average $1,500 net on Canadian families after phony rebates. They just pile drive Canadians with a second scam that will cost Canadians another $500 without any rebates. They hid the facts, but their own budgeting officer exposed these scams. They've made the cost of gas, groceries, and home heating more expensive. The first scam hit the most vulnerable Indigenous populations hard. The second scam is going to cripple lower-income households even further, just so Liberals can look more woke while more Canadians go broke. When will they scrap the scams and stop gaslighting Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The truth is that the Conservatives have absolutely no plan to do anything to fight climate change and will set our country back on making promises towards a cleaner economy. When it comes time to ask the oil companies to reinvest their record profits in the innovative solution in clean technologies, the Conservatives immediately back down. We're proud to support the Clean Fuel Regulation, which, when fully implemented, is already contributing more than $2 billion in the last year alone, Mr. Speaker, to the Canadian economy. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Let me sober this out-of-touch orange jumpsuit-wearing minister. Yesterday, Food Bank said that those accessing food charity quadrupled since this Liberal-made inflationary crisis. They already made rents and mortgages double, and to continue down their woke, climate zealot ideology, they'll take another $2,000 out of the struggling Canadians' pockets while failing to meet any climate targets. How much more woke do they need to go? How much more broke do Canadians need to go before this Prime Minister wakes up?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, I'm told that orange is a new black, but to expand on the benefits to the Canadian economy of the clean fuel standard, let me talk about the Tidewater $342 million plant in British Columbia. This year, Mr. Speaker, Imperial Oil, 720...
I'm going to interrupt. We're starting to get noisy. It started off really well. I was really impressed. I just want to make sure that we continue. The Honourable Minister from the top so that everybody's quiet and can hear the answer, please.
Speaker, I'm told that orange is a new black. I would like to further expand on the examples I wanted to give, like the Tidewater $352 million plant in BC, Imperial Oil, all privately funded, $720 million plants for cleaner fuels in Alberta, Federated Co-op's $2 billion plant in Saskatchewan, or Brian's plant in Newfoundland, which received an added $300 million of private financing in the last month alone, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Edmonton Mill Woods.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, Canadians' lives have become more unaffordable. They already have one Liberal carbon tax that is costing Canadians 41 cents per litre. And now there's a second carbon tax that will cost Canadians 17 cents per litre. Once you add a tax on that tax, it's going to cost Canadians 61 cents per litre, making everything more expensive. Why do they continue to force Canadians to pay for their failed policies?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, if the Conservatives are going to oppose the clean fuel regulations, which they supported during the last election campaign, they should explain to Canadian farmers, particularly canola growers in Western Canada, why they oppose something that will increase domestic canola demand by over 5 million metric tons and support a strong canola price in this country. Canadians don't need short-term scare tactics, Mr. Speaker. What they're looking for is long-term affordable solutions to the climate crisis, and that's exactly what we're doing on this side of the House.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Millwoods.
Mr. Speaker, their failed carbon tax has not achieved one environmental target that they set. They need to get out of their ideological bubble and go talk to real Canadians who drive for a living. Talk to truck drivers, talk to delivery drivers, talk to cab drivers, go talk to some farmers, and they will tell you the real cost of their failed policies. On July 1st, the second carbon tax will cost Canadians an average of $573. That's on top of the first carbon tax that will cost $1,500. Mr. Speaker, do they really believe that Canadians can afford over $2,000 for carbon tax 1 and 2?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just this week, the Parliamentary Budget Office stated that the effects of climate change bit a $20 billion-sized hole out of Canada's economy in 2021 alone. Mr. Speaker, I understand that the Conservative Party of Canada doesn't believe in climate change, but they pretend to believe in economic responsibility. Why is it that the Conservative Party wants to cancel a market-based mechanism that is putting a price on pollution?
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. $436, that's what the average household in Quebec will pay, in addition to this new tax that applies directly to Quebecers. While more and more people can't afford to buy groceries, fill up their car, and they have to make difficult choices to live, these Liberals and this Prime Minister, who pays his own vacations and gas prices for 10 years, he should take a step back and stop making life more difficult for Quebecers who are having a hard time, who are struggling. The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to correct a question that was made by the Conservatives earlier in this House that was talking about a Quebec tax, and the member sent us this tax, and on this report we've seen we have a cap-and-trade system in Quebec. It's a Quebec system that applies to Quebec and not the federal system. Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. 17 cents a litre and new regulations on clean fuel will cost Quebecers $436 more per year. That's the second carbon tax that the minister doesn't seem to want to repeat, Mr. Speaker. No one believes in this minister when he says it doesn't cost Quebecers more and they're not facing the carbon tax. When people buy groceries and they pay for products that were transported across the country, they realize things cost more. They're not crazy. They know it's the carbon tax. Why is the government singling out Quebec with the second carbon tax? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague's statement is false. What we are doing is making sure that refineries who have made record profits in recent years pay their fair share. 26 cents extra on refining margins, and we think that they do have the means to pay for the fight against climate change. And Quebecers who are watching us agree with this, so that all sectors of this society and all parliamentarians work in the fight against climate change. The Honourable